don't look too bored.
I'm so tired, man. I was up till 3 last night editing. I was up till 5 the other night editing.
Damn. Oh yeah, I'm getting to that too. All right, we're already live here, and
Oh, we are already live.
we're live.
I'm complaining. People are listening.
All right, welcome to another episode of the iFilmmaker podcast. My name's Ariel Martinez, and as always, Mr. Saratelli from Jersey.
Good evening.
Good evening. It's late. We're in the same time zone, so
Yeah.
we can say that. It is well, it's not late, it's 9:45, but you were just complaining. So what were you complaining about?
About how tired I am, man. How tired. The grind of filmmaking and editing. But I love it, man. I could sit here and complain to you for a while just because my schedule's crazy right now. But in the end, I love it. Even though it's crazy. I love it.
You can't possibly continue in a job or industry like this if you did not love it. You can't. It's just, you'd be so miserable.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Sure. No, I can't. I wouldn't do something I don't love if I don't have to, of course.
If you have to hustle like this, you have to make sure that you love it.
Yeah.
So we are back for another episode. Welcome everyone that is joining us and joining us live right now on YouTube. If you're not joining us live, well, that's probably because you're not following our YouTube channel. We're on YouTube, iFilmmaker Podcast. Go over there. Make sure that you are subscribed and you will be receiving those notifications. Well, make sure you turn on the notifications so you can receive those notifications, and you can join us live. It takes 2 seconds to go and subscribe. Make sure you go there, subscribe, get notified when we go live. You can join us on our conversation and ask us whatever questions you want. While you're at it, make sure you check out Jersey Filmmaker YouTube channel.
Yes.
There's some great content on there. You just did a comparison between the Red Epic W and the Red Raven.
The Red Weapon, Helium. So not the Epic W, the Red Weapon and Raven. I wanted to go high end and low end. It was a really interesting comparison. And my results were, man, they were so similar, and it's just crazy. I thought they would differ because the Dragon sensor and Helium sensor might pull out something different, but I did it two different ways. And excuse me, you can go in post and change. Obviously, it's all metadata. You can get the Dragon to look just like a Helium sensor. You can go with the new IPP2 workflow. You can throw on all the log gammas and curves, and then throw on your LUTs that they provide, and it will be pretty. They were like pretty much exactly the same. Yeah. So you could do it that way. But even when I was shooting on the Dragon and the Helium in like the red gamma 4 Dragon color 2 spaces, they still came out so similar. So it's pretty nuts that you could shoot on a $15,000 camera as opposed to a $70,000 camera and get such a similar image. So anyone interested in trying to get into the red space, it's a really good investment. Well, you know what? I should clarify that. I wouldn't consider the Red Raven as much of an investment as anything above it, because all the other ones are so much more upgradable. The Raven doesn't have like switchable mounts and these things that you can upgrade and move to new sensors. So from the Scarlet on, very good investment. But if you just needed to add to your list of gear for your clients, so it's something else you can offer, the Red Raven is such a good purchase. If you're a filmmaker providing work to clients, it's really something good to put in your arsenal. So,
all right. That's awesome, man.
Little quick tidbit. And that was episode number 50, by the way. So I'm really
congratulations.
And I hit 1,000 subscribers. So
attaboy.
Things are going. I like it. It's fun.
It's fun, man. It's fun, but it's definitely hustle. Ooh, you gotta be that's something you can't get around.
Yep.
So I've been receiving a few questions as to my export settings that I use, right? So I've been getting several questions on social media about the export settings that I used for my for pretty much all my jobs.
Sure.
And I gotta say, it's not always the same, and it depends on what phase of the job I'm in.
Okay.
That would determine my export settings. I think you do something kind of different though. So I was thinking today we can talk about that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So let's go ahead and begin with I guess what are your export settings? What why and how you deliver it.
Sure. I pretty much have two go-tos, right? I have an H.264 version that if I know my client's putting it on the web and it's being thrown around via the internet, I will a lot of times give them that version because, well, I might give them both a movie file, like a QuickTime or ProRes file, along with this file because it's a little smaller to upload and depends where they're uploading it. And but I'm not scared to give them an H.264 file, an MP4 file, right, at the highest like bit rate. I'll max out, I'll crush it like 64, whatever the top max bit rate is, and I do a VBR2 pass. And I'd love to, we'll explain that when we get into that, and I'll tell you why I choose that. But it's either that or usually a 422 ProRes file are the two files that I generally hand out in the end. And we've actually done an episode on how we get it to clients, and I mostly use Dropbox, but some clients use another server called Box that I have to work with a lot. But there's all kinds of file WeTransfer. There's all kinds of file transfer, websites that people use. So those are my go-to, like movie ProRes files and H.264 files. Believe it or not, I know people are going to be like, "What? You hand out an H.264 file?" But I mean, a lot of the stuff I do ends up on the web anyway, so I'll give them that version so that they don't have to worry about it's going to get crushed anyway. So it's really not much different, if at all.
Now, do you think, and I'm not an expert on this stuff, I'm not an expert
nor am I
on the scientifics of these codecs, but granted, yes, it's going to get crushed, right? It's going to be processed, whether it ends up on YouTube or Vimeo, whatever. Every platform has their own processing that goes on with all these uploads that we do. Now, my question is, and I've always wondered this, I don't think I've ever gotten like a solid answer, but
I know where you're going to ask, but go ahead. I think
my question is, would it make a difference if you have a higher res file that's being crushed or processed, let's say, than let's say a lower res file that's being processed? Is there a difference in the outcome, or is it all going to be processed the same?
I've tested it myself, and I don't see much of a difference. I think there is a difference if you render a lower quality H.264. So again, when we go through the settings and talk about that, if you throw out a lower bit rate on those, so you can try to save on your file size, then yes, you get a difference. But if you max out the bit rate on an H.264 file, I think they look perfectly fine on the web. Everything I do on my YouTube channel are H.264 files because they are literally like 3 times as small as the movie files. And I don't want to be uploading 15 gigabyte files to YouTube. Like it's silly. Like I don't know what it would do to a 15 gigabyte file. I feel like it would crush that even more. So I'd rather upload a 4 or 5 gigabyte file, which is plenty big.
If I'm not mistaken, I think that MOV files can also be the same size as because there would still be 264 files if we're not doing ProRes.
Right. Yeah. So I don't toy with. So I know what you're saying. So
yeah,
if you go to quick render as like a QuickTime file, but then go select H.264 in the codec, that's what you're speaking of, right?
What I'm sorry. Repeat that one more time.
So you're saying if you choose to make it a QuickTime file, like as your format, but then you go down. I'm looking at this right now to make sure I got this all right. Then you go down below and you select your video codec and you go down to H.264. It still comes out as a movie file.
Right.
Here's what you're saying. I don't know the scientifics here. I don't understand the difference there. What's the difference between exporting a movie H.264 or an actual H.264?
Right. So that's where, I mean, I think at the end of the day, they're both the same thing.
I think so too.
I just simply think that Macs they're catered more for MOV files, or I'm sorry, the other way around. MOV files are catered more for Macs. MP4s are more for PC, but they can both be played on both platforms, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I don't think you can render a ProRes file off of a Mac because I don't think they have those codecs. I don't think.
What do you mean?
That can't be true. That can't be true. I thought you couldn't render ProRes on a PC. Did I say Mac?
Yeah, you said Mac.
That's I meant PC. I meant PC.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I've never worked off PCs, so I don't know. But
okay.
I know that they don't have those codecs, so
right.
I don't know that you can render them out. I don't think you can, because I know there's some things. I actually tried to render out a GIF or a GIF one time, however, and you can do that in it's called animated GIF in Premiere. But at one point, whenever I tried to do this, it wasn't supported on a Mac, and I was like looking everything up, and it's like, yeah, just select animated GIF in the presets, and I couldn't find it. I'm like, what's going on? And it wasn't like supported at that time. It didn't have that codec, so I don't know how it works for PCs. I really don't. I'm sorry that I don't have that information, but so yeah, I don't know if you can. I would imagine you have to be able to. People working on PCs have to be able to output a ProRes file if need be. So, but I thought there was a difference there.
I'm going through a relatively old forum here. There was a post made like in 2016, and maybe there's something more recent, but they're asking the question. I've recently installed the Premiere Pro 2015 CC in their computer, and they're having issues. They're saying that when working through a new sequence window, ProRes 422 is not there
on a PC.
On a PC, yeah.
I'm pretty sure it doesn't support those codecs, so I don't think you can render them out, but I could be wrong. At this point, they could have somehow changed that, but I thought that was the case.
Yeah, and so the biggest, I guess, the most, I guess, you know how they usually have an answer that's usually the most approved one or whatever. They're saying the first line starts with ProRes won't be an option for previews or export on Windows.
Yeah,
as I do believe Adobe is working on making ProRes readable on Windows machines without QuickTime installed. But even with QuickTime installed, the ProRes has never legally been an option for writing files on PC. So remember, this is
because it's an Apple product, right? ProRes is an Apple product,
right? Maybe it's already out, but remember, this was 2 years ago. We don't know what the case is right now.
Yeah, so it could be. It could be.
Well, anyways, that's that.
But yeah, so like back to what you're saying. I don't know how different those are if you export a QuickTime H.264 as opposed to just a straight up H.264. But I've done tests myself, because I've asked what we're talking about right now, and people asking you. I've asked so many people for whether it's for clients, whether it's for social media. Right. Social media is a huge one. I'm still trying to figure out, and I want to do an episode on that on my channel and try to figure out what the best settings are. But I've gotten so many different answers. There was a guy that I liked the best that you had on the show. You interviewed the wedding Matt.
Oh, yeah, that's Matt.
I forget his name. Matt something. Oh man, it was like he has some really good. He has some really good tutorials on export settings. Man, we need to look up his name so we can.
He had a good video. The funny thing is that his like alias is like Who is Matt?
Who is Matt? That's what it is. Yeah.
Matt? That's his YouTube channel.
I like that.
That's his YouTube channel.
Yeah. But he has some good stuff on export settings. But what's funny is I've tried them and they don't necessarily render the best quality that I thought it would get. So
right, because it's going on social media. This is meant to be watched on your phone.
Right.
From what I understand.
But because I've heard you have to keep like an Instagram post under 100 megabytes for the best quality, but I do that, and just like you said, it's like if I make one that's around 100, it crushes it. If I make one that's around 500, it crushes it, but it's a better quality that's getting crushed, right? So yeah, I think you're right in the sense that like a higher quality would probably get crushed less from my tests,
well, especially
in social media.
It's almost like if you're trying to get it to this level, right? It's gonna, for example, if you're gonna get it to a level 10, think about it's gonna get crushed down by two values.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know.
10, you crush it down by 2 values. If you get it to level 5, you'll end up with a level 3.
But
so
I didn't
that's
know
how
that.
I think about it.
Right, and that could be true. I wasn't sure that. I'm thinking or hoping that it no matter what will crush it to a level 2. So if you have a 10, it's going to a 2. If you have a 5, it's going to a 2. You know what I mean?
Again, that very well may be the case.
I don't
just have peace of mind.
I agree.
This is only for uploading.
Yeah, I mean, I think about it though, both of those result in it getting to a 2, right? Or I guess no matter what, you should do the bigger file in my mind. If you do either one of our theories, no matter what, the better file will be the better file, right? The bigger file will be the higher file, higher quality. So I don't know. I just try to make them big and see it. Hopefully they upload the best quality. To be honest with you, uploading, that's a whole nother topic. I'm not talking about giving to clients right now. And that's one I am just stumped on. I've been trying so many things.
There's a couple of things that I do enjoy about exporting MP4 though. Most of the time I'm on MP4, but like you said, when I want to get that higher quality, I'll export ProRes and I'll go to 422. Usually not a HQ, just regular 422, and that usually ends up being a very, very big file. But there's a couple of things that I can do, and I guess more or less you can do that with QuickTime, because if you look at the settings, right, if you decide to do QuickTime and then you pick Apple ProRes 422, it gives you the option of saying how much quality do you want, right? So you can also manage. What I like is that I can control how much quality I can have, right? But the thing is, it doesn't tell me. It's giving me by percentage. Basically, I can lower it by this much. It's from 0 to 100. How much quality do you want? So that really doesn't help me because it doesn't tell me how big the file is going to be anyways.
So as soon as do you have to click match source to get the right size file?
Yes. So you have to do that. For some reason, you have to put match source to make sure that you're getting the 16:9 aspect ratio or whatever aspect ratio that you're going for. And I don't know why it gives you a weird one every time.
I've right now I'm looking at this and my quality is grayed out for some reason. So I don't know why it's not popping up. And I can't even change quality.
So if I put,
are you seeing the same thing?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's like it automatically is 100%, which is fine by me in this situation because that's kind of what I want, anyways.
Yeah. So this is what I was saying. I don't lower the quality when I do ProRes. That's the only reason when I do ProRes. So if I go directly to H.264 instead of QuickTime, it'll be a MP4 file. And obviously I can match the source, but I can go down to the bit depth, to the bit rate settings. And I can tell it, well, I still want a smaller file. And at the bottom there, it gives me the estimated file size. So I can see how long this is going to take, not only to export, but to upload to my Dropbox to send it to my client. If it's something that I need real fast for them to review, I'll make sure that, I go up in the presets and I'll just hit medium bit rate. Medium bit rate, and that brings it up by default. It brings it down to the target bit rate 3, maximum bit rate 6. That's perfect. It's fine. Sometimes when I need even more, because lately I've been doing these 30 and 40-minute videos where even if I put high bit rate, that's going to end up being a 4 GB file. I definitely don't need that much. So I put it to medium bit rate, but I go down there and I'll put it like at 2, the target bit rate at 2 and the maximum 4, and that way, I mean, they don't need the quality. They don't need to see the quality. I always assure them the quality. They just need to see roughly what they're going to get. And also that's also a way to, I guess, protect yourself. Because giving them a high resolution file and if they haven't paid you yet.
So that's where you're talking about where we do it a little differently. I will upload a higher res file. I'll either watermark it, or I make the video not downloadable on Vimeo. So I send it via Vimeo. I don't send them something to download, and I just want them to look at it. And if they want to rip it off of the the screen, I mean, then that's a whole nother level.
You're gonna have to deal with all that.
But, so
I definitely get that, and I have done it before. I have, and I'm not opposed to doing that even today. Anytime I get a bad vibe from any client where, and it hasn't happened in a while, but it has happened before, I'll do that. I'll definitely make sure that what I do, I don't watermark it. I kind of do, but not with the logo. What I do is I put a very thin white X across the entire thing. Entire thing, like everything. It's super thin. You can barely see it, but you definitely see it, but it's not intrusive. and that's how I deliver a very low res file of that. But I've done that literally twice. Right. I've done that twice, and never been an issue. But I, you know,
one of the things I like to do, I like to watermark them because, especially if we're kind of doing like versions and cuts, and there's new cuts and new cuts, I don't want them to have anything. If they somehow did rip it or whatever, I don't want them to have anything usable if it's not the final cut, right? I don't want 10 cuts out there. So I'll watermark it for that reason too, just in case they somehow do grab it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I've come across that issue where they get confused.
Yeah.
And it's not even about the whole paying thing. It's about, I sent them so many versions already that they don't know which one's the right one. And they've had asked me like, hey, which one's the latest one? And I've had to go back to and here's the thing, I don't delete any of the rough drafts.
Yeah.
I keep them in my Dropbox, and like I make a separate folder for exports, and I'll name them the files differently. Yep. I'll give it a number sequence on there, on the title, and that's basically how I know. So obviously the biggest number is, you know, draft 1, draft 2, draft 3. The latest number is the one that I send them, and you know, sometimes they'll ask me, hey, which draft is the one that is the latest, most updated one, and I'll just resend it to them. But yeah, I don't keep I don't delete the previous drafts.
Yeah.
So
I keep them versioned when I send them out, like, so they know it's like version 1.1, and if we just make minor changes, it might be version 1.2, and then if there's a major change, I might just go to version 2, and then it's the 2.1. So then I'll label the final, and then it's the worst when it's like final, and then they're like, we want to make one more change. Then you guys have another one that's like real final or final 2. It's like, oh, come on, man.
The final. Yeah. When I label it final and then it's another export. Yeah. I definitely have come across that. Yeah. I've called it like final for real.
Yeah. Come up with something. Make them laugh at least. Like, okay, at least I know this is the last one now.
Oh man. So yeah, I don't think I've ever, you know what? I've had come across some instances where I had a client. So for example, FIU, I was doing a project with FIU that was being funded by a third party company. I think it was like JP Morgan Chase is funding this big project I'm doing with FIU, and for some reason they cannot see the Dropbox link.
Dude, I've had that problem, and I don't know I don't understand that.
I think it has to do with their servers, with their network, that they don't allow, because if they get a virus, I guess something like that.
And that's the reason why some of these companies, like, they're like, hey, we have to use Box.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like, because they can't use it for whatever.
I guess Box scans the file.
Yeah, maybe.
Themselves. Okay. You know what I mean? Maybe Dropbox doesn't do that.
Yeah.
So they have to definitely be safe with opening any files like that. It's very understandable. So,
yeah, that makes sense.
And so they said, hey, can you send they asked me if I can send like a YouTube link. And I told them, well, I could definitely do Vimeo, and I'll send it with a password and everything. So that was helpful. I mean, I had my account, and I just don't use that feature, but yeah, it's always there when I need it like that. So that's always a good thing for sure. For some reason, I don't know why, up until a little while ago, I always thought that was a feature for like the pro accounts. I have a Plus account.
Yeah, no, I have Plus as well. I've used that so much in the past, and I mean, I still do. Yeah, that's the step I always took to protect it, as opposed to like sending them smaller files.
Yeah,
I don't want them to be able to download anything. So like I make sure that, again, it's not downloadable on Vimeo, so they could just go there and watch it. They can send the link around with the password if they want, if multiple people have to see it, so that you know, they don't, because Dropbox is not a streaming, you know, it's not a streamer, as you know. So like, if they send that link and that person decides just to try to watch it on there and it gets stuck, and it's just like, let me send them something that works, that's high quality, but they can't do anything with it. Like that's kind of my mindset.
Yeah, that's another issue.
But it's another step. It's another step. So
that's the thing with Dropbox. Also, I've had that issue where I send a link to a client,
they try to watch it on there,
and they try to watch it, and they tell me like, hey, it's very glitchy, or
That's the problem. They might be like on the move and on their phone. That's what I worry about too, you know?
That's exactly what it is. So I tell them like, well, it's probably your internet. So download the video. If you're watching it on your phone, download it. If you have the app, if not, just get it on your browser, download the video, then watch it again. And you'll see. And literally 9 times out of 10, that's always the issue.
Right.
That it's their internet. But that's not, for me, that's not big enough to tell me to go to. It's just so much more convenient. Because what I want to do is I want to export directly to the Dropbox folder where I'm going to be sending it to them, right? Instead of waiting for the export and then going up and uploading it to Vimeo or anywhere, it's going to take time. So I always tell them I always just export directly to Dropbox.
Right.
I have my Dropbox connected to one of my drives here, so I have plenty of space.
Yeah. Let me I'll go through then my H.264 settings, because I use them so much because of YouTube and stuff. So I know these pretty well. And I'll explain what I do with the bitrate settings. I think that's the most important part, because if you go to H.264, and if anyone's listening or live or listening and is by a computer, if you want to follow along, I'm in Premiere, and I'm just pulling up, I'm hitting Command M and pulling up an export here, and the first thing I'm in is format. I'm going to H.264, so I'm not in QuickTime now. I'm going to go to H.264. And what I've learned is that there's all these presets, obviously, right? And there's ones for Vimeo. There's ones for YouTube. There's ones for, that say high quality. They're really no different. They're no different. The only thing is that it's changing the bitrate settings. So it's it has a preset installed, and it's just making a selection for you based on whatever your selection in the preset is. So I don't even bother with that. I'll generally drop down and pick any one of them, just as long as it's a 1080 one, because I know that's what I'm going to be rendering in. So whether I pick high quality or YouTube, it doesn't matter, because I'm then going to scroll down to the basic video settings. You can hit match source if you like, just to make sure that you're at the right setting that your project's at. The level, so there's a profile that's always on high for me. I don't ever change that. There's a thing called level that can get quite confusing. If you select a different level, like 4.1 drops it down to a 720 image, and 4.2 is a 1080 image. When you get into the fives, I think it goes higher once you get to like 5.1, because there is a 5.0. Oh, I'm trying it right now. And yeah, 5.2 is a 4K file. So,
and this is still on H.264?
This is still on H.264. So the levels kind of have presets too. I don't really toy with them because I'm generally in 1080. So it stays at 4.2, but you can play with those and you'll see that it changes your dimensions of the file. And I believe, I'm going to look right now, also changes your bitrate stuff as well. So it's kind of like another preset within the preset, which is really kind of weird. That's what I understand of it. I could be wrong. There could be more to it that I just don't get. But like I said, that stays on 4.2 and I have no issues. So I do always click render at maximum depth.
I ask you something about that.
So I've read 1,000 things on this. Do I click that one? Do I click use maximum render quality on the bottom? So what I've come to conclude, and I mean, your research is as good as mine, and there really are different answers out there. So I don't know that this is 100% true, but from my tests, I've found that, I mean, if at all, it might give me a better quality. Just clicking render at maximum depth does. What I think that does the best thing for is, like, let's say you're shooting 4K files and you're finishing in 1080. For whatever reason, I think this is the biggest part of your files being resized to whatever you're finishing in. This helps with that. I don't know how much, I think it's very hard to see what it actually does. But from what I've read and studied and finally come to a conclusion that this really helps resize your files. So to whatever you're finishing, the dimensions you're finishing in. So I always click that. And I have read that use maximum render quality can decrease decrease the quality. I have read that. I don't think it does, nor do I think from my tests as well that it does much more to it. So I don't think that one matters if you have it clicked or not. Like I don't see much of a difference.
So about the using maximum render quality.
Sure.
That was so I used to have this issue where, and I'm sure someone listening to this is going to have had the same issue where when I would put any overlay or any kind of transition, like a fade transition on any one of my videos, it kind of has like a strobe effect.
Sure.
As it's happening. Have you ever had that happen to you?
No.
For some reason, as it's transitioning, and if I'm not mistaken, I may have been wrong, but it seems to.
I think I know what you're talking about. I don't know that
it happen only when it's transitioning over to a dark image.
Okay.
Right. It does this thing where
it's not smooth. It's like clicky.
It's not. It's a constant strobe.
Oh, okay. No, I've never seen that.
It's a constant strobe, and it's happening throughout the entire just as it's transitioning. Once it gets to the image, it's done.
Right.
And I've tried everything. For some reason, sometimes on lower thirds, I just want them to fade in and fade out.
Right.
It's strobing as it's fading in, and it's super distracting. But I could not, for the life of me, for a long time, figure out why that was happening until one day.
You unclicked it?
No, I clicked use maximum render quality, and that has never happened again.
Nice.
So ever since then, I never export a video without using maximum render quality. Because
yeah, dude, I can't imagine it would say maximum quality and it would be a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
But I've again read in betweens about it, so I just don't click it, and haven't had a problem. But I'm glad to know that. So if I ever see that, that could be the reason.
If you ever see your it's a crossfade. If you ever see your crossfade transitions strobing like that, try that. Use maximum render quality, and that's at the bottom of your H.264 export settings.
Yep.
And it's right at the bottom, and you'll see the first top left it'll say use maximum render quality. Make sure that that's checked.
Yeah. And I definitely used to click both all the time, and then I came across something that made me unclick it, and I haven't had a problem.
Okay.
So that's just where I'm at. I don't see any issue with clicking that as well. Render at maximum depth, use maximum render quality. Both sound really good to me. I don't see a reason not to click them, honestly, but I just have gotten into a habit of not using that one right now. Maybe I'll get back to it now that you've taught me something.
Yeah, man, that thing was revolutionary. I'm like, thank God I figured that out.
I'm going to test that. I'm going to do some crossfades. I'm going to test that.
Yeah, do some crossfades. It didn't happen all the time. I was doing.
But you said it was a light image into a dark image. So if it was
so
fading out per se.
It doesn't have to necessarily be a light image into a dark image, but it was only when I was going into a dark image.
Okay.
It doesn't matter from where. Okay. So I don't know why. And it's so funny because I was doing it was a quick event with my church, and I was just doing a quick slideshow. It's the simplest slideshow. It's a pictures, and all I did was put all the pictures. I clicked everything, and I put the Command D, put a crossfade on everything, right? And there were so many pictures that was happening throughout the entire video. It was a strobing. It didn't happen to all the pictures, but it happened through all. Through a lot of the images where it was just strobing a lot, and I could not for the life of me figure it out. I did like 10 exports, and it kept doing it and doing it. And on the same pictures also, by the way.
Yeah.
I couldn't figure it out.
And that was the answer.
And then I just kept looking at the settings, and I used maximum render quality, and everything went away. Sweet. Everything. And I don't know. Ever since then, I've never had the issue again, ever. So we'll see.
All right, great. Well, I might go back to clicking. I'm definitely going to do those tests and figure that out because I've never had anything good or bad happen from it. So I just haven't clicked it. Everything.
I would do 2 exports, one with it and one without it.
Yeah,
and see the difference.
I mean, that's when I was going through all this, I did that, and I didn't see a difference, right? And like I said, if anything, I got scared by one of the things that I read, and it was like, well, if I don't see a difference, and it could potentially be bad for whatever reason that I read it for, I just unclicked it. But But if I see something good come of it, I'm going back to it. So I'm going to test that out. And if that works, if I get that issue and it irons it out, I'm going back to it. So
good.
So, okay. So that's that. So render at maximum depth, I very much suggest, especially like I said, when resizing your files, you suggest use render maximum render quality. So
yeah, just for that reason.
Yeah. So
other than that,
those are your reasons for those. And then now the bitrate settings. So this is probably the most important part.
Oh yeah.
So there's three things you can select, right? CBR, VBR 1 pass, or VBR 2 pass. What they mean, CBR is constant bitrate. VBR is variable bitrate. And there's a 1 pass, which means it literally goes through with a variable bitrate 1 time, or 2 pass, it goes through 2 times. So constant bitrate is pretty self-explanatory, right? It's gonna, whatever bitrate you set it at, which is anywhere from 0 to 62.5 when you're using this H.264 format, it will render the video out at that bitrate the whole time. No matter what the image looks like, no matter how much movement or how static the shot is, it's going to render at that bitrate. So you're going to get a file size at the bottom that's probably going to be spot on to what it's going to be, what the final file size is going to be.
Usually.
Yeah. With constant bitrate, it should be pretty close.
Yeah.
Because it knows exactly what it's rendering it at the whole time, right? And the higher you go, the higher the file, of course. The lower you go, the smaller the file. So that's going to render it out, again, constant at that bit rate. So so you can go and test these, and you could drop it down to like 6 if you want to do something for for social media if you need to, or you can go to like, 12 or between 12 and 20 if you want like a medium size. And like I said, I'll jack this thing up to 62.5, but I don't use CBR. And I'll tell you why in a second. So CBR is definitely going to and you go to 62.5 is definitely going to give you the largest file you can get, right? You're doing the max bit rate the whole time. You're going to get the largest file you can get. I go to VBR 2 pass, and what I'll do is I'll jack up the maximum bit rate to 62.5 so let me explain what variable bitrate does. First of all, if for those who don't know, what it does is it goes through your whole file, and every frame can have a different bit rate, right? It can vary throughout the whole thing, because if there's more movement in your shot, it's going to use a higher bit rate to capture all those pixels and the crazy amounts of colors and movements. But if you have a very static shot with, let's say we're recording what we're doing right now and we're just sitting here talking, the background is not changing. It doesn't need to re-render those pixels. It already knows from the last pixel what it was. It's just changing like my hand movement or my mouth movement or whatever. So it'll focus the bit rate and the emphasis on the parts that are moving. So the bit rate in that frame will have to be a lot less, because it kind of pulls from the prior frames of what's going on around me or any of the movement. So with variable bit rate, it won't necessarily max out your bit rate the whole time. Okay. So if you put this somewhere in the middle, like 20, 25 as a target bit rate, which is the top setting, that's going to be like the ideal bit rate that you're going to want to use. So when there's crazy movements and stuff, it's going to probably get up to about whatever your target bit rate is. I'm sorry. It's going to get up above your target bit rate because you've maxed out your maximum bit rate, which I think is a good thing. And a lot of people don't want to jack that up because they don't want their files to get too big. But when the screen gets crazy, you want that to be captured as best as possible, right? So I set the maximum bit rate as high as possible. That way, if anything crazy does go on in my shot and it needs to use that extra bit rate per second, it will do that. But it will try to average out the rest of your files at whatever your target bit rate is. So what it does is it lowers your file size. And now this is only if this matters to you, right? File size. It lowers your file size because when it doesn't need those extra bit rates, I guess you call them bit rates. I don't know. When it doesn't need that extra bit rate to maximize the quality of your image in that frame.
I would just say information.
All right, perfect. Information to maximize the quality in your frame. It won't use those extra bit rates, right? It'll sit near your target. But when it needs them, it can go capture them. So I never set my maximum bit rate low. Like I want that jacked up so that when it needs it, it's there.
Right.
So now the target bit rate is where I play around with, depending on what the project's for.
Right.
If I know it's going to be used on Instagram, we can set this a lot lower because it's just not needed to go all the way up, and it's going to still render a very good image. A lot of times you honestly can't even tell the difference if, let's say, you put it at like 20 or you put it all the way at 62, because again, when it needs those extra bit rate, when it needs that extra bit rate, I don't know how to say this, it grabs it because you maximize your maximum bit rate, right? This might sound all confusing, but it's really very simple if you kind of listen to me say this 6 times. So go back and listen again. But now 2-pass, what it does is it'll go through a second time and kind of reassure itself that it did the best it could. With 1-pass, it's just going to go through once and do what it does. So I always like to do a 2-pass too, which does take longer, sometimes twice as long, because it goes through the file twice to capture and like maximize the quality of the file. So I like to use VBR 2-pass. I always jack up the maximum bit rate, and I play with the target bit rate as well. A lot of times, especially even for my YouTube videos, I jack up the target bit rate all the way as well, which is pretty much the same thing as doing a constant bit rate at 62.5. But I know that in VBR 2-pass, if there's a static image in the background, it will it would hit a lower bit rate if needed, even though your target is higher. With constant bit rate, it won't do that. So it's going to just, again, maximize your file size, which I don't need for my YouTube stuff. So anyway, very like confusing to explain, but if you understand what I'm saying, it gives you the most options, right? Yeah. So your VBR 2-pass gives you the most options, and it maximizes the quality while letting you play with the file size. So it gives you the most, it gives you the most options for where you need to export it to, you know?
So, this is the reason why it's so hard to answer questions like
this. Yeah. How do you answer this when someone asks you what's the best settings?
Yeah. There is no best settings. Yeah. There is understanding what the settings do. And then you have to decide what settings best works for what you need to do with your video. There is, and then the same thing goes for what are the best camera settings for shooting outdoors? What are the best camera settings for shooting indoors? That's definitely not a question no filmmaker would answer you, because it's not, there's so many variables that you have to consider before setting that stuff up. And we don't know that stuff, so we have to know that stuff. So Mike, I'll tell you this, my camera settings when I shoot outdoors is not always the same. So this idea that there's always one setting, there's some settings that are and the same thing goes for export settings. There's always this one setting that always has to be used that doesn't exist. Nobody does that. And you have to think about that stuff. And this is the part, the bitrate part is where people don't understand. I've had so many times where, people think that they have a 4K camera, so that's it, I'm good. Yeah. Just because, but I'll be honest, this is mostly from, people that are not into this stuff. So, 4K at so-and-so bit rate at 150, I think, what was it? It was like 4K at 150 bit rate. What would be better? Not resolution, but in terms of sharpness when looking at it on your phone, for example, or something like that. There's 4K at 150 or HD at like 300.
Right.
What would look nicer?
So I don't know. They're probably
you could probably stretch out the 4K better, but if you're looking at it, depends where you're looking at it at too.
If you're looking at it on the phone, I can't imagine. Yeah. I bet that HD looks phenomenal at 300.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Megabits per second.
I was researching now, and I don't know if I found the right information. I'm looking through forums here, and I was trying to see because video from, I think it was from an iPhone, let's say, it does look gorgeous. It does look really, really good when you look at it on your phone, right? And I was trying to see how many megabits per second does an iPhone use? And it looks like here it says it's 35.
Wow.
So I'm trying to think. That is not that much.
No, it's pretty low.
But the image looks great, you know? Yeah. So obviously when shooting outdoors, when you shoot outdoors, every image looks great.
A lot of light out there.
Yeah. So, you know, there's different levels of 4K, different levels of HD. There's the compression is really where it makes the big difference. And that is what this is about.
And megabits per that speed that you shoot at megabits per second is also very useful in slow motion. The higher it is, it does grab better slow motion because you're jacking up your frame rate and your shutter speed. For it to be able to capture more within the second, because those frames are so much shorter or quicker. There's so many more in each second.
Yeah,
that is helpful when shooting slow motion. So those higher bit rates really help at that point too.
That's good. Yeah. I think we got it. I think people that are listening to this, I encourage you guys to listen to it again with like your editor of choice
in front of you. Yeah.
In front of you. And then look for the settings that we're talking about. It might be different. It's definitely different in Final Cut Pro and any other editor, but we're specifically referring to Premiere Pro. So if you're a Premiere Pro user, go ahead and listen to this episode again with your export window open and see what we're talking about. If it was all confusing for you, so that you can just take a look at what we were referring to, because we both had them open right now and we're basically referring to that. So, and
I apologize for my odd description of everything. I've never really had to explain that before. I've just studied it and I know, and I was trying to regurgitate all that. Maybe not very, very smooth and clear, but I hope that, if you at least sit down with it in front of you, you'll understand what I'm saying.
It's funny because I was understanding everything you were saying. I just never thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
I've never had to think about it. Like I've never had to go in depth and try to get an understanding of what goes on in there.
That's what happened. I mean, I was very interested in that when I was like toying with this. I'm like, what do these mean? What are these CBR, VBR, 2-pass, 1-pass? What if I change these? Like I can easily tell if I make it lower, the image isn't as good, but if I make it high, but like, why are there two sliders now? Like with VBR, like what does this mean? Yeah. So I don't know. It caught my interest and I was like, I want to know what this is. And I studied it for a minute. So I understand it. And now at least I'm comfortable with my choice and like exporting. And I've maxed out the constant bit rates. I've maxed out the variable bit rates, and I compare that to a 422 MOV file. And I got to tell you, it is very hard to tell the difference when you jack that up. It's getting the max out of it. So like, it's really
I've come across that also.
Yeah,
I've come across that also.
I mean,
so I think we have time to answer this question here.
Yeah, I saw that sitting there.
We have a question here from someone I haven't seen in the chat before, so welcome. His name is Jose Polanco, and his question is, I've gotten interested into filmmaking myself, and I have a Canon 70D. It's the best camera I can get, so I have to work with what I have. Is there any tips you can give us newbies as far as shooting? And which program is best for video editing? So that last one goes back to what we were talking about. Depends on how you like to edit. What I can tell you, I'll start with that last question there. Which program is best for video editing? I have experience with Final Cut Pro 10, and I came over to Premiere, and yes, it was definitely intimidating at first because I was very used to the consumer friendly icon friendly platform and interface of Final Cut, and I was so comfortable there because if I needed some sort of effect, I can literally just drag my mouse over the effect and see what happens without having to actually put it in my timeline. So that was very beneficial. If you want to
go ahead, sorry.
If you want to move fast, I think that Final Cut is good, but if you want to get in depth with your editing, if you want to have more flexibility with your editing, if you want to be able to open up Audition and have a dynamic link to fix your audio, you could do that in Premiere. So if you really want to take your editing to a whole nother level, I think Premiere would be the way to go.
Yeah, the dynamic linking, if you do ever want to get into, like you said, some audio fixes, you can send it over to Audition. If you do ever do anything in After Effects as far as, you know, visual effects or just motion graphics, you can send it over there. The dynamic linking is so convenient when you get into those things. So if you want to start somewhere and you know you want to continue doing this, you might get into those things, Premiere is the way to go, in my opinion. Here's where my age might show a little bit. I started in Final Cut 7. Do you have any experience with Final Cut 7?
I have used it before, and it was very similar to Premiere.
It's very similar. So I started in 7, and it's very not icon based, and it's very flat. And that's how I started, and that's how I visualized editing. So when Final Cut 10 came out, I hated it. Hated it because I'm like, what is this? They went so consumer, and it bothered me so much. And I love Apple, but I was like, I can't do this. I went over to Premiere. And it, you know, it's just the way I see editing. Like, I don't even expand the bars so that I can see the video image on the video line. Like,
that took me a little while to get used to when I came over from Final Cut.
I don't do it. Like, I keep them so small, and like, I don't see the icon on there. I just know, like, that's just the way I see.
You know what editing. Layer that is.
I know what it is. Like, I just, so that's the way I look at it. Which is funny. But we should touch on one other thing, and I only know of this from Film Riot for the most part, but HitFilm is pretty cheap. I think it's like a $300 program. You just buy it and it's over. You don't have to subscribe like you do and pay like $50 a month for the Adobe suite. I think HitFilm's around $300, which is an editor. It does visual effects, and I don't know about audio, how deep that dives in, but I hear that's pretty good from them anyways. And I've heard one other person that I know has used it and they liked it. So,
and
it's an option.
Final Cut is $300 too.
That's right. It is. I actually have Final Cut. I actually have Final Cut 10 from buying my Raven. It came with it.
Oh, nice.
And I don't even use it. Maybe I'll do a giveaway one day. But Final Cut 10. But I do like to have it in case anyone ever gives me a project.
How do you give that away?
I have the serial number. Like, I haven't even installed it. So
nice.
I have it. But I do keep it on hand just in case, as a business. Anything comes up and somebody's edited it in there and they want to send it to me and they're like, can you fix this? You know, I don't know. It's just like a business move for me to keep it. But
I guess. So you had mentioned something a second ago that I completely forgot, and I wanted to touch on that real quick. You were talking about Final Cut 7 and how we were talking about how similar it is to Premiere. So I was talking about, we're referring to how hard it was to get used to the timeline. And basically that was just something that I had to get used to. I was definitely used to looking at the
if I tried to use Final Cut 10, or when I tried to use it, I was like, I don't understand this timeline. I don't understand what this like. It looks so weird to me, you know.
That magnetic timeline, actually, I hated it more than I liked it.
Yeah,
I really didn't like it, and that was one of the things I loved about Premiere. That is no magnetic timeline.
Yeah, I just like the layers. I understand how that structure works. Like, I don't know. And just used to it.
It's probably a lot more different now than it was before.
Sure.
Also I would look into Resolve.
Yeah,
Resolve.
And they have a free version.
It's free. You can get it. And from what I understand,
I hear it's good. I hear it's
good. They have the editing feature of it is really good from what I understand. You could really do projects on it.
I heard their color features are decent too.
Well, that's what they're known for, the coloring, which is terrific. Again, I have to dive in more into that. I've been playing with it little by little,
we'll
but
we'll get there.
But yeah, so they started. So it seems like DaVinci is trying to become an editor of choice for many people, and so people like Dave Dugdale, who has a successful YouTube channel, he has already switched over to DaVinci full time. He doesn't use anything else. And the cool thing, I mean, you edit there, you color there. And now this last NAB, I believe, is when they announced, last year's NAB is when they announced that they implemented this audio. Apparently it's a good audio interface.
Yeah.
It's a system that it's basically like getting DaVinci and implementing it into Premiere.
Right.
So that's kind of how it was. I wasn't aware of this audio program before.
I would consider it, man, I really would consider it, but I use After Effects so much that it would just crush me to have to export things to send them over to do that. So that's a bummer, because I would love to edit over there, because I'd love to get more into the color side of things, but I can't make that move. I guess there's definitely projects where I don't need to be in After Effects, but maybe I'll start doing some of them over there and see how it goes.
So Fairlight is the audio, and I hadn't heard of them up until I heard from NAB that they released that, and my friend Fernando told me that they're actually a really good audio software, and they're implementing it into DaVinci Resolve. And I'm looking at like timelines here on DaVinci, like screenshots on their website, and it looks very similar to Premiere. They have it all color coordinated here. I mean, but they make everything look nice. But I don't know, man. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. So I don't know. But like you're right. You lose that I use the After Effects a lot. I use a dynamic link to add lower thirds if I need to. If I need to add a transition, if I need to add a any kind of animated or movements of text on there, I'll put it. I'll just do a quick dynamic link, and I'll get that done via like an adjustment layer. I just throw it on there and send that over to
that's exactly what I do.
The same thing.
Yeah, I use it. I used to use and I didn't realize you could use adjustment layers. I'm like, they're like, it's like nothing, right? It's like a clear layer. So I'm like, I didn't think I could send that over. I used to use like a black video or a color map, and it would like block what I'm seeing. Like I'd have to hide that layer, and then I finally one day realized, I'm like, I just throw an adjustment layer over it. I could time it. I could even time out, like if there's like something that I got hit on a beat, I'll do that. I'll put a cut in the adjustment layer, and then I'll send all of the adjustment layers. If maybe it's like 3 different pieces, because I made a cut, it sends it over there, and it knows exactly, like it shows you where the cuts are. So I make the change on the beat. it comes back over, and it's right on time, So I just love that, man. It's just
that whole feature is great. And before that, I used to actually do the edits, the After Effects edits on the actual clip, which I quickly found out that wasn't efficient, because if I had to, if I wanted to extend that clip, I couldn't, because it was already fixed.
So I mean, you'd have to go in there, extend your timeline in Premiere. In After Effects, then do it in Premiere. It gets confusing.
If I needed the same text on a different clip later on, I can copy and paste that adjustment layer. As opposed to just doing the same exact thing over again.
I do a lot of things with the actual clip, though, where I'm like, definitely. So those obviously have to go. But I would always, here's a suggestion to anyone, is always make a copy of that layer before you send it over, just in case like you end up wanting to extend it or something, and you don't feel like goofing with it in After Effects. Then you can resend it over and kind of just copy and paste your effects. So make sure you make a copy of it, just drop it onto like a hidden layer or something before you send over the actual file, or at least have another like sequence saved. Like I usually do a cut, and I'll call it like the original or something like that, and then I make a copy of the sequence. So now I have all the original cuts in the original sequence. So if I need them for some reason after sending them over, and it's like, I goofed this up, let me just start it over, I can just go grab it. So just make sure there's a copy somewhere, because it becomes convenient if you ever have to like make changes like that. No. Hey, I feel bad. We got to that last question. I want to just answer this question about the 70D. He said, the 70D is a great camera to start with. I mean, we spoke about this on a recent episode. It doesn't matter. You could use your phone if you really wanted to get out there and be a filmmaker. You could use your phone to get started. You have a 70D. That's fantastic. Any tips I could give you as far as shooting as a newbie? Go shoot. Go shoot now. Like, go shoot every day. Practice. We've done, both Ariel and I, we've talked about this before. When we've got started, that's all it was practice. We weren't getting paid. You have to practice this craft. It's not something that just comes to you. So just get out there and shoot, man. You got a good camera to work with. It'll be fun. Go get it.
Great camera to work with, definitely, because I have a lot of experience with the 70D. It was my first camera that was mine, right? Technically it belonged to my church, because when I started, you know, they had asked me what camera I should get, and at the time I was like, well, the 70D is great, you know. So we went with that, and I was able to use it a lot, and it was terrific. The touchscreen, you have a touchscreen on there. You got a nice swivel screen. It's a really good camera. And one thing I would say though is, instead of, I would actually start looking at lenses, because oftentimes your lens really helps the image quality.
For sure.
So I have a friend that he's still stuck on the Nifty 50. He loves that lens. He won't get away from that lens. And I'm like, man, you're missing out. You have no idea what you're missing. He's just like super over obsessed with the bokeh that he gets, because it's a 1.8. And not to say that that's a bad lens. It's a great lens.
Right.
But this is a friend of mine that is looking to upgrade. He doesn't, but he feels that he's fully set with that 50. And I'm like, man, here, let me show you the difference of quality. So I slapped on my, he took a shot with his Nifty 50, and on the same camera, I lent him my 50 to 100 Sigma art. And he took a shot with that, and it's incredible the difference in quality from a kit lens that costs $50 to a lens that costs $1,000, you know. And
I hope there's a difference.
Oh, are you kidding me? And so he was just like dumbfounded. He couldn't believe that like the difference in sharpness, you know. And he didn't even have to upgrade his camera. He did it on the 80D.
Right.
So he shoots on the 80D, and he loves the Nifty 50. And I showed him, and mine is a Canon lens. So I slapped on my 50 to 100. He took a shot at 50 millimeter, and he was like incredibly impressed. So he was looking to upgrade the camera, but now he's actually going to upgrade the lens so he can get that sharper image, the better image. And oftentimes the lens, and here's the thing, lenses last longer than cameras for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
What I mean longer is it's not going to get outdated anytime soon.
They don't. And then when it is quote unquote outdated, it's now a vintage lens, and people want that too. So,
right.
So they don't go bad, man. Unless you break them, they don't go bad.
Yeah. Like, so for example, Canon's 24-70 Mark II, right? 2.8. How long has that lens been out, man?
Oh, man.
It's been such a long time.
That's what I'm on right now. That's exactly what I'm on right now.
Yeah. And it's still a very, very popular go-to lens for many, many people.
Yep.
They last forever. I think that lens came out with like when the Canon 7D came out or something like that. It has been a very long time. And basically, you know, it goes to what I said, like lenses last for a while. So it's an investment that you're making for a good period of time. So I would recommend looking at lenses. You know, if you still have a kit lens and all that stuff, it's great. If you have a 70D, that's a great camera. I would go with looking to upgrade your lens first, and start building up that kit, because you're gonna have that for a while.
Yeah.
So, that's the tip that I would give you. And just like Anthony said, just get out there and shoot something with your camera. That's it. Just get out there and make something, man. Get creative. And you know, just keep doing, keep learning, get on YouTube, learn from, it's so saturated with YouTube is so saturated with tutorials and tips and tricks and all that stuff. One of my favorites.
I'm as dumb as they come trying to get into that market, but I love it.
Yeah, there you go. Jersey Filmmaker. That's right. Go to Jersey Filmmaker. Is one of the several channels that are out there that are teaching people. Other ones that I like are you know, Film Right is probably one of the most popular ones out there.
Yeah.
And then I really like Peter McKinnon.
Yeah, I like Peter too.
I like his little tips and tricks that he does with transitions and all that stuff. It's really cool stuff, and I like his attitude. And
yeah, he's fun to watch.
Yeah, he's definitely fun to watch.
I mean, you don't get 1 million subscribers in 1 year without being a cool dude and fun to watch, and he's killing it.
Yeah, he definitely is. All right, man. I think that pretty much wraps up this episode. I think we spoke a lot about export settings. We spoke a little bit about our video editing, the programs that there are out there. I'm sure that there's several more, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that in another episode. I want to say thank you to everyone that is joining us live. Thank you guys for being here, Mr. Jose Polanco, Mike Douglas, Twisted Art Productions, all you guys have been great. Thank you for listening and putting up with us, and for sending in your questions. And for those of you that did not join us live, it's probably because you're not subscribed and not getting notified when we go live. So I encourage you guys to go over to our YouTube channel, iFilmmaker, and hit that subscribe button. You can find all these links, including Jersey Filmmaker YouTube channel, on iFilmmakerpodcast.com. Go over there, check out the show notes, and get subscribed, and make sure you're following us on also social media, all that stuff. If you want to get in contact with us, I think that would be the best way, and that stuff. So cool.
Yeah, man.
You have anything else you want to add?
Man, I think I said enough today.
Yeah, we said enough. By the way, our teaser for Zion is ready to go. We will be blasting that in the next couple days, I think. So we're going to be blasting that. The teaser's done. We've both been crazy busy. We've finally been able to finish that part, and then we got to obviously get to the final product, but hope you guys are going to enjoy that. Stay tuned for that. Follow us on social media. You got Jersey Filmmaker. Mine is arielmartinez.tv, and we're going to be putting that out there very, very soon. So thank you guys for being patient. Mr. Mike Douglas Photography, thank you for joining us for the first time.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here with us. And Mr. Saratelli, we'll see you guys. We'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, man.
Later.